There's a lot of people that are trying to create change in society. They introduce action-based information to people that are in pre-contemplation. And when you don't match with where somebody is in their change process, they become resistant because you're not respecting where they are in their place for change. And I think that's one of the things with an initiative like this that you have to be very careful of, is to be mindful of every place you go, every person you're talking to might be in a different place in their change process. And by doing cookie cutter, broad spectrum information, you don't respect the, and I think that's one of the challenges of where pamphlets fall short. That's the challenge of sometimes where force-fed information falls short, is because it doesn't acknowledge where people are in the change process. It all goes back to relationships. That all learning and all change takes place in the context of relationships. And I think we forget that sometimes. And because it's to steal a word of a friend, it's messy. And it's hard. It's because relationships take time, they take respect, they take acknowledgement, and I think that that's the real challenge, is how do we build relationships with people? How are we patient with where they are in their knowledge to get information to them? So what I've also spent a lot of time reading about and learning from the people that I'm working with is how do we help people change that's respectful about where they are in their life. The two most powerful things in our area are family and religion. Those are the two most powerful things. And family and religion are two of the strongest social institutions with firm beliefs about how children should be raised and dealt with. Religion, in a lot of religions, it's very scripted about how a child's to be raised and dealt with, and people will use that as a reference point. Family, I always tell people back home, when you get a lot of resistance, you might be defying God or grandma. As soon as you defy one of the two G's, that you can lose your opportunity to speak, that you lose your opportunity to be accepted, and your information, no matter how wonderful it is, no matter how many fancy books or whatever you've read, you have lost your avenue to communicate with them. The first thing that I always start with is you have to be unbelievably mindful not to shame. My dad did a wonderful job of bringing me to terms with this, because when I was coming into a lot of information, it created conflict within me because I was raised a certain way, and I love my parents more than anything. They're just wonderful people, and I think they did a pretty good job raising me. But there were some practices that they did that conflicted with some of the things that I was learning. So I went to my father, my dad, who's not a very educated man, but a bright man. And I asked him, and I said, Dad, I'm learning about all these new things, and it kind of doesn't match with some of the things that you did when I was a kid, and so on and so forth. And he said, well, son, of course there's new things. And he goes, but we did the best we could with what we had been taught. He said, we did the best we could with what we knew. And he said, we really felt good about what we were doing. And he said, and he's real big about, you're no better than anybody else. And he's instilled that very much. No matter how many degrees you get, no matter how fancy your website is and all this kind of stuff, you're no better. And if you bring that, people sense it. Especially where, at least I know from where I'm from, they will sense it. So he said, be careful not to ridicule or shame people for doing what they thought was best. We have to acknowledge that what they did was not wrong, but they did it out of love, and the intentions were pure. The first thing I do is not to shame. Second thing is get them in touch with the idea that they were designed to do this. This is what they are naturally capable to do, and that I'm there to support them, but not to brainwash them. And they get to make choices. And empowerment's come up several times, and I think it's important not to create an external dependence, that they have to have me to solve their problems, but we equip people to be able to solve their own problems. Because when we get people dependent on us, that's about ego, that's about feeling good, you know. But when we give it to people and they come in and go, oh, I couldn't have done it with you, go, I always tell them when they say, I couldn't have done it without you, I say, I couldn't have done it without you. It's the craft of communication. It's just a very powerful and understanding change, how people change, and all that. So, most catastrophic, as it seems, change occurs in small increments and small adjustments in a trajectory of something. And I call it the law of the nudge. It's just my own label that I've given it, is that a small nudge, and this speaks very well to early life, a small nudge at this point seems very small, but if we take it all the way out there, it changes an endpoint to directly in front of me to way, way, way over here. And sometimes that difference looks catastrophic, but the difference a lot of times isn't something out here, but these nudges that have taken place along the way. And I think it empowers people to realize that the moments they have with people, the significance of the moment that you have with your child, the moment you have with the client, the moment you have with the patient or with an audience, that's where the power is. When I'm sitting with my son, that's what changes the world between me and him.
Jim knows that our earliest experiences shape our physiology, our brain, our perceptions, and our beliefs. He adapts up-to-date knowledge to parents and communities where strong traditional and religious values can make people quite resistant to change. He wants everyone to understand how parent-child attachment is key, not only to full development and well-being, but also to breaking stubborn cycles of abuse, neglect, and low self-esteem. Jim Harris has great faith in the innate capacity of people to learn, to heal, and to grow.